tax-free savings whilst remaining true to Islamic principles. You can start saving from just £250 or transfer your existing cash ISA savings to benefit from a competitive rate of return. So you can look forward to a bright future for you and your family. Call us today or visit islamic-bank.com. Banking you can believe in.
As violence spreads across the Central African Republic, an astounding 400,000 have fled their homes and livelihoods. With thousands already killed and many thousands more seeking refuge and safety in neighbouring countries, more than 2 million are in urgent need of aid. Muslim Aid is working with partners to provide essential food, non-food items, healthcare and shelter. Please donate now and help a desperate situation.
Your journey of a lifetime begins here. Dreaming about making that special Hajj or Umrah trip? Just focus on the purpose of your visit while we take care of everything else. Whether a standard or deluxe package, we never compromise on quality. We want you to come back spiritually fulfilled. Call Travel Pack on 0208 585 4064 or visit hajjandumrahtravelpack.com.
Do you know who made your clothes? Does that even matter? And can fashion be a force for good? We're here to find out how fashion will be making history today. This and more only on Women's AM. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Women's AM, the morning show catered for you lovely sisters on this beautiful Thursday morning. We'll be looking at what is a historic day in the fashion world. We'll be also looking at a great selection of articles, and in our last segment, we'll be taking a peek at swap shops as part of ethical consumerism. We also have a great competition, so stay tuned to know how to enter. I'm your host Adama, and we have Liz and Hassan, and our special guest Yasmin Khartoon is a journalist and producer for the Islam channel. Assalamu alaikum, you guys. How are you guys doing today?
Alhamdulillah, very well.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. It's a question that comes to my mind all the time. If the Prophet, peace be upon him, was still here today with us, how would we spend our day with him? So for me to start off the discussion, I'm going to ask Sister Hassana to intrigue us as to what she would do.
Yes, honestly, what a hard question. I think, to be honest, there's no easy way to answer that. You'd want to ask him so many questions, and I think that's probably what I'd do. Just spend the whole day asking a long list of questions. I'll be there, you know, just typing away all the answers. Alhamdulillah, yeah, I think I would just fire away questions.
MashaAllah. What about you, Sister Liz?
Well, I agree with Hassana. I think it's cruel to ask just one day.
I know.
You know, there's so much that you'd want to do, and so many, you know, as Hassana says, I would, you know, want to fire away loads of questions as well. But yeah. I would also really want to kind of observe his relationship with his wives. You know, we read a lot about it, but I think to actually see, you know, the kind of sensitivity and the closeness that we often hear described around this relationships would be a really valuable and moving thing.
Cool. And what about you, Yasmin?
It's a very big question.
It is loaded, right?
Imagine spending a day with Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I think I would probably just ask to shadow him. For him to carry on as he normally would, doing everything as he normally would, as though I wasn't even there, just so that I could see the way in which he carries out his actions and observe the manner in which he does them.
Like sahabas, isn't it? Essentially, isn't it? Mashallah. I'd have probably have like a sort of crash course into good manners with the Prophet, peace be upon him, myself as well. It would be so cool, mashallah. Well, we'll now go straight into our first segment of the show, News Bites. In this segment, we take a look at a variety of stories and articles, and if you have a comment on any of the articles, please let us know by ringing. The number to call is on the screen. I'm going to start with you, Sister Liz. What article have you got for us today?
Well, I'm actually going to be sort of cross-referencing two articles. Obviously, it's a year on from the Rana Plaza disaster, so this is something that's being covered by a number of media companies out there today. So start off with an article in 5 Pillars. A year after Rana Plaza disaster, the evils of the fast fashion still reign supreme. And it's basically, lots of words used in this article to describe this industry, greed, corruption, injustice, rampant consumerism. And, these are all things, I think, as a consumer, we've these have become synonymous with that industry, and we know this is what it's about. And you know, obviously this all came to a head with, you know, the horrific disaster where the factory collapsed. Over 1,000 people lost their lives. Many more were injured. And it's really just a reflection on, you know, what have we learned since then. The Observer also covers this article, you know, similar sort of message. Rana Plaza, a year on, did fast fashion brands learn any lessons at all? Sadly, you know, the message seems to be that, you know, we've actually still got quite a long way to go. You know, far from being a drop in the profits of these companies, they've actually seen, you know, a boom in their profits, and even looking into other places that they can sort of outsource these factories to. So, you know, as well as Bangladesh, they're looking into other countries like Burma and places like that to also, you know, monopolise this sort of this cheap labour, which is, you know, primarily women, and it's, you know, it's badly paid, they're badly looked after, and, you know, it's just something that we all need to be aware of.
Just to touch on what Sister Liz is saying, I often find, and it's, you know, we discussed this yesterday as well, with lots of different productions. Yesterday we were talking about milk production, and today we're talking about fashion. We're often really distant from the actual product and the history behind the product. When it just, you know, it comes to us, it's all packaged lovely, and we kind of just look at the product as the end thing, with little to no knowledge about how it got there.
I think that's what's so important about today. That's trying to reconnect that chain and reconnect that thread, and asking, you know, as to why we're wearing all our clothes inside out, looking at where those clothes tags are, where they're coming from, and the garment makers and people behind those pieces of clothing.
I mean, why do you think that? I mean, there's obviously the companies themselves, but individuals, as you say. Why do you think we're so sort of, you know, sort of not conscious about what is actually going on in the fashion industry and the supply chain as well, and how it's affecting workers' rights?
Well, I think a lot is lost in translation. When a garment sort of moves from, whether it be where the cotton is being produced, from going into a factory, from being put together, from being turned into a garment, that then is shipped halfway across the world to another place, to a store. The stores often even don't know where their clothes are being made. One of the things that came out after Rana Plaza was that a lot of the manufacturers, a lot of the actual brands didn't know whether they had clothing that was being produced in that building. And that's a very scary thought. If they don't know where their clothes is being made, how are we ever going to know ourselves? And that's one of the main things, transparency in the supply chain, and trying to reconnect that chain and knowing as to what steps is going through. If there is transparency, then we'll know. And if we know, then we can change.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what was quite interesting from the article that Liz mentioned was the fact that the industry, the clothing industry as a whole, is such a big mainstay of Bangladeshi society and of course, the social structure, such that there was a 6% growth over the last couple of years as a result. So this is a very big issue, not just obviously for Bangladesh, but actually the fashion supply chain, where they're actually sourcing their clothes and
no, exactly. I mean, whether it's Bangladesh, women, the garments industry, 80% of Bangladesh's GDP is reliant upon the garments industry. Women make up the most of that industry. Now, so women are being employed, which is great. You know, women who've got jobs, they're being able to provide for their families. But if they're not being taken care of, if they're corrupt dealings and they're not actually, you know, reaping the results of that growth, then who's actually benefiting from any of this?
Because actually, you know, the Rana Plaza, we all heard a lot about that, but actually, in the years following that, there have been other, you know, atrocities as well going on in these factories, poisonings, fires, you know, that are kind of much less reported, but you know, certainly
it's not gone away.
It's not gone away. We've actually got a caller on the line who wishes to ask Yasmin a question. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Jazakumullah khairan, brother, for joining in on the show. What is your question?
My question is to Yasmin Khatoon on the panel, and it's regarding the whole unethical fashion and, you know, what happened in Rana Plaza a year ago. I'd like to ask her, what does she believe is the root cause of this whole problem? And let's say if the root cause was capitalism, what's her thoughts on how to deal with this head on?
Right. Well, that's a big question. Root causes, I think there are a number of causes. I don't think it's one particular thing, whether it be the capitalist system and the way it's structured in order to make money. Greed is clearly one of the main issues here. People trying to get what they can out with paying as little as they can. As well as that being the case, you know, transparency, I think these are the things which will help, which is why I've got my clothes inside out, so I know who's producing my clothing. Reconnecting that chain is one of the most important things, because if we're not aware of these things, then we won't be able to solve them. Capitalism clearly has issues because it's money-making. You know, the World Bank, when we see the targets that they put on Bangladesh, they're saying, you know, you've got the potential to employ 15 million people. Why are you only employing 3.5 million people? When clearly the country hasn't got the infrastructure in place to be able to do such a thing. But when these targets are being put into place, obviously capitalism you know, is at the crux of this. But in terms of dealing with this, I think awareness and for the public to be able to you know, raise awareness and be conscious of their actions, because we all play a role. It's not just the World Bank. You know, we are consumers. You know, we also have businesses. We have a part. We have a thread. We all play a role.
Yeah, definitely. I think it is about understanding that we're actually part of this chain, and it's not just a chain that somehow starts in Bangladesh and ends at the stores. That we actually continue this chain as well, which is actually very important. We'll be looking a lot more into that as well. Sister Hassan, what's our next article?
I've got a really interesting one here from The Guardian. The headline is "Girls who get caught in bad romance risk more than just their broken hearts." It's a really interesting one from Jill Filipovic, and she talks about the concept of romance. She discusses how relationships can actually affect girls' mental health, and I found this really interesting because she talks about the fact that often girls see their mother doing the caring kind of duties, and you know, she says, "We celebrate marriages as the most important day of a woman's life, expecting brides to spend thousands planning and executing perfect days. But it's much more rare to hear someone say, or hear someone tell a groom that the wedding is his big day." How often do you really hear a groom saying that, you know, my big day's coming up, or, you know, I want to be her Prince Charming? You don't often hear that kind of rhetoric from the men. So the question is, are we kind of training or teaching our girls to react in this way? And what kind of effect is that having on them? So it was really intriguing, the kind of things she talked about. And one of the things she said was that young girls often, what they find is that when they look at their relationships, it becomes their defining factor, and it becomes almost like their identity rather than a part of their life. And when that happens, if that relationship breaks apart or doesn't work out, it actually has a real crippling effect on these young girls. Whereas for men, it's kind of not the same effect. The relationship is a part of their life, and they have a much more healthy approach to relationships. And it made me think a lot about what Islam teaches us about relationships. And often we find that sometimes we become so invested in relationships, whether that's our relationship with our spouse or our family or whatever else it is, our relationship with our work, whatever it is, that we often forget that the biggest relationship we need to have is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we're not building on that relationship, ultimately all our other relationships are not going to work out, because that is where we need to focus most of our attention. And I was listening to talk about this, and Sister Yasmin Mujahid, she puts it really beautifully. She says, if the person you marry becomes your ultimate focus in life, your struggle has just begun. Now your spouse will become your greatest test. Until you remove that person from the place in your heart that only God should be, it will keep hurting. And ironically, your spouse will become the tool for this painful extraction process until you learn that there are places in the human heart made only by and for God. And I think that's ultimately the lesson we need to take away from this, is that the heart is made to love and to have relationships. That's absolutely fine. Islam has a place for relationships. It's not about that. It's about treating relationships in the right way. It's just a means to the end. It's not the goal. So ultimately, our end and our goal should be, our obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attaining His pleasure. But if our heart is kind of focused on the relationships we have with other people above the importance that we place on our relationship with our Creator, then we've got our priorities quite a bit wrong.
Definitely. I mean, the panel, it just actually reminds me of the fairy tale books that we actually had, you know, when you have this role model princess who finally finds her Prince Charming, and you kind of, when you kind of grow with those kind of stories, it's no wonder that we actually look upon marriage as a focal point for ourselves, and it's something that we actually have to sort of step away from and remember that it's actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's our focal point.
And we need to remember, you know, even though we have relationships, that relationship doesn't define us as a person. We're our own individuals. That relationship is a part of us. And it reminded me of the fact that if we look at relationships in history, and we look at Asiya, you know, what an incredible woman, but she was married to one of the worst of men. So it is possible to be your own person. It doesn't matter what relationship you're in. So we should look to the likes of these people and understand that we're each individuals, and you know, we're going to be accountable for our own deeds, not the deeds that we, you know, of our spouse or our family or whatever else it is.
Fair enough. Do you have a short comment for that, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with the, the sentiment about being more self-defined before you enter into these relationships. But I do think as well that women, by nature, we are more kind of pliable in the sense that when we enter into these relationships, we're more inclined than men are.
Emotionally invested, I think.
I think so, yeah. And I think that's just our nature, isn't it? So I don't think we're ever going to get completely away from that.
It's about having that balance, isn't it?
Exactly.
And educating our young girls.
Absolutely. Well, just like looking through those selection of articles and your comments as well. We'll now go for a short break, but before that, here is a reminder of the competition we're holding for you this week.
This week on Women's AM, we have another exciting competition for you sisters out there. Up for grabs this week are 3 copies of a wonderful children's book entitled The House of Ibn Kathir by S.N. Jalali. For your chance to win a copy, all you have to do is answer the following question. What was Abdul Muttalib's real name? Is it A, Shayba, B, Hashim, C, Abdullah, or D, Ibrahim? To enter, email your answer A, B, C, or D to womensam@islamchannel.tv along with your name and address and what you most like about Women's AM. The deadline for entries is Friday the 25th of April 2014 at 4 p.m. All applicants need to be over 18 and residing in the UK. Please note, only 1 entry per person per household. The winners will be randomly selected from correct entries and they will be announced on Monday's show. So get entering!
So there you have it. A great prize to everyone, so do send in your entries. We'll see you after this break where we'll be discussing Fashion Revolution Day. Assalamu alaikum.
Hajj, a journey to the blessed land. A journey to the house of Allah, a journey you will never forget. To perform this spiritual journey of a lifetime, start saving with Oasis today. Invest in your future. The Oasis Crescent Way, the compliant way. For more information, visit our offices at 50 Hands Crescent, Knightsbridge, or call us on 0808 238 7543.
Muslim Hands presents its 6th sponsored Snowdon Challenge to support the needy and orphans around the world. Join this fantastic challenge across one of the UK's highest mountains on Saturday the 14th of June to help provide free education, nutritious meals, medical care and a brighter future to the less fortunate. Secure your coach seat for only £15. Register now at muslimhands.org.uk.
Travel made easy with Travel Pack, established for 30 years. With exciting offers on flights, hotels and holidays, with a wide range of destinations at great prices. For the latest flight and holiday offers, visit travelpack.com.
Attention! If you have suffered an injury as a result of an accident, here's an important announcement. Due to recent changes in the law, some solicitors could charge you up to 25% from any compensation you receive, but Claim 500 deduct nothing. So you keep every penny, every pound, every bit of compensation is yours. Make sure you choose Claim 500 to handle your claim. And remember, Claim 500 guarantee you your full compensation if you win. So make the right choice. Call 08458 123 456 now or go to claim500.co.uk.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back from the break. I'm your host Adama and we have Liz, Hassan and Yasmin Khartoum, who's a journalist and producer for Islam Channel, joining us for today's discussion. Assalamu alaikum. MashaAllah, you are campaigning a lot within the fashion industry, within the fashion realm as well, and MashaAllah, you've done a lot of articles as well with respect to this issue that we're going to be discussing today about Fashion Revolution Day. What got you interested in ethical fashion in the first place, Yasmin?
I've always been interested in fashion. It's always been something I've very much sort of explored, tried to uncover, and the first piece of it I'd ever sort of had published was actually on ethical fashion. It was on something called DIY couture, and do-it-yourself couture, basically trying to reconnect that chain. I think that's something that was very important to me as a politics graduate and somebody who's always been interested in the development of people, acknowledging our responsibility. Fashion was never something that was fickle to me. there was always some more substance to it. And I think a way by which I could put substance to it was by looking at the way in which garments were being produced, you know. Something that's going to be very, very beautiful, but also can be very corrupt. And to be interested in the garments industry for me was to always look at the ethical side of things. So that sort of brought about the interest. And of course, fashion's very pretty. It's something I think most girls quite like.
So it's a great merging of the two things.
Exactly, exactly. As somebody who's, as a journalist, you explore, you uncover, you unravel, you teach, you put a message forward, right?
So in terms of this idea of ethical fashion, you know, our responsibility as, you know, people consuming fashion. What about our community? Do you think, what are we doing to kind of...
The Muslim community?
Yeah.
Well, I think we've been lagging a little behind. I think we've come onto this a little bit slowly. But a number of things, for instance, with Fashion Revolution Day, a number of things are happening. On Sunday, the London Muslim Centre has brought together the British community, something I'm working with the London Muslim Centre, with Made in Europe, who are also a charity who are working around raising awareness on these sorts of issues. So different communities coming together, different Muslim communities coming together to raise awareness on these topics. Because often you hear about these things via certain museums, or certain groups of people. It's deemed as a very middle-class issue, a very middle-class non-Muslim issue. And I think Muslims do need to re-engage, and I think it's something that's very important to me. That's why I've taken it up, because I don't see many other Muslims sort of talking about this or doing something like it. So somebody who's got an interest in it, if I don't do it, then who else will?
Absolutely, definitely. We'll look forward to going into the discussion and finding out more about that as well, just like on the Cairo. Let's now go straight into our main discussion. In her views, where we'll be looking at Fashion Revolution Day. Fashion can inspire, transform and provoke different types of reactions. Today on April the 24th, 2014, designers, fashion icons, academics and campaigners have come together to mark this day as Fashion Revolution Day. Last year on this day, over 1,000 people were killed when the Rana Plaza factory complex collapsed in Dhaka, Bangladesh, whilst many were injured working in unsafe conditions. And there are many more examples where ordinary people have become victims of the fashion supply chain. We'll be looking at the legacy of the incident and what Fashion Revolution Day aims to do. But before that, we have this short feature for you.
24/04/2013. The Rana Plaza factory in Sabar, in the outskirts of Bangladesh's capital Dhaka, collapsed. The building fell to its feet with thousands still left inside. The building had been deemed unsafe and on the verge of collapse. So why were those garment workers still left inside? At the bottom of the food chain, workers' lives seem to be worth less than the clothing they produce. Over 1,000 people lost their lives and many have been left permanently disabled.
A year on from the biggest modern-day industrial disaster of our...
Well, we just got a snippet there of a documentary that will be showcasing tonight as well. What did you think about that, Hassan? Very contrasting images, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think, you know, the extent of the atrocity there is very evident. But also, I think what was mentioned there, that the workers' lives are worth less than the clothes that they're making. That's a really profound statement. I think that's something we really need to consider. You know, in this whole fast-paced fashion industry with fast fashion, you know, at the epicenter of everything, we really have to be considering our buying habits as consumers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, to get into this discussion, I'll fire away with you, Sister Yasmin.
Well, that's just a snippet from our documentary, which is on tonight at 9 o'clock. It's something that I've been exploring, as you said, something that I'm very passionate about. But consumers, consumption, what is our role? What role do we play?
Absolutely.
You know, what's changed a year on since Rana Plaza? Now, we saw the biggest modern-day industrial disaster. You know, over 1,000 people lost their lives, 2,500 injured, 200 kids left orphaned. You know, this was no small feat. But has anything actually changed? And like Sister Liz mentioned earlier, you know, it's not an isolated incident. It's not just the one thing that happened. You know, weeks after the collapse, there was water poisoning. You know, there was another factory fire after that. There was a factory fire before that, you know. But so this garments industry, you know, so are we actually conscious of what's taking place? You know, when we pick something up, do we know, you know, the implications of those purchases?
Well, the key aspect here is consciousness, isn't it? And I think Fashion Revolution Day is a very important starting point. Can you explain to our viewers what exactly Fashion Revolution Day is about and what its objectives as well?
So Fashion Revolution Day came about after the Rana Plaza factory collapse Carrie Summers, who's the founder, she thought of the idea thinking, well, there isn't actually one uniformed thing that's going on. There isn't one uniformed day where people can actually come together. There are people working on the issue, but is there actually something that we can all come together on? So what if this isn't a good day, what day is, right? So everybody on the 24th of April 2014, this is the first time Fashion Revolution Day has happened, a year on from the Rana Plaza. People have come together to as a day of activism. A day by which you can say, we're not going to take this, we want change, and a day for us to do different things. Now, 52 countries and more coming and joining around the world are doing a host of different things, whether it be workshops, it can be classes, it can be, protests, demos, stunts, loads and loads of different things going on all over the world to try and re-engage our role as consumers, to try and re-engage those businesses, tell those suppliers, tell them where our clothes are coming from. One of the things that Carrie and the team at Fashion Revolution did want to focus on this year was transparency in the supply chain, like we mentioned earlier. So that's why everybody's wearing their clothes inside out, right? Because we want to know who made our clothes. We want to ask the businesses and the companies who are producing our clothing, where is it coming from? Who's making our clothing? We want to know, because well, this isn't something we are going to tolerate.
I think this is the thing, isn't it, about this day? It's about awareness, and not just in the sense that it's kind of, you're mildly aware of it somewhere in the back of your mind, but actually thinking, what does this mean? What does this mean to me? What can I do to kind of contribute to the solution?
This is very important.
Exactly, and I think, and that's why, we mentioned the Muslim community. We have got a few different individuals, like Made in Europe, are somebody who have come out to try and do some campaigns. They're doing stunts, all sorts of things. And on Sunday, at the London Muslim Centre, people will come together. The Muslim community is being told, what do you want to change? There'll be a screening of the documentary. You're coming together. Sheikh Shams Ad-Duha will be there. Scholars, we need them to come out and tell us, what is your role as Muslims? Yasir Qadhi is in the documentary tonight. He spoke about ethics in consumption. He told us, what his opinions were. And we need to hear it.
Alhamdulillah. Well, this is a fantastic start to the discussion. Alhamdulillah. I look forward to continuing with that as well. Really informative discussion. Inshallah. If you do want to, of course, join in the discussion and ask questions or comments, do let us know, inshallah. The number should be on the screen shortly as well. Sister Liz,